does a children's hour every afternoon from 4 to 5, and then every Saturday for like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly popular. In fact, this signal goes out all over Montana and to a lot of places. So kids in Great Falls hear Pea Green Boat every afternoon from 4 to 5. Well, they read everything. They play music. They read everything. And you know, it's one of those, you know, they don't have permission for all the stuff they're reading. They figure they're covered. But and in Pocatello, we were pretty blatant about using copyrighted stuff because the cable company covered us. Here, that's not the case, and so they're really strict here with copyrighted stuff. And music, you know, we have to have permission. And so for storytelling, we'll only use little bits and pieces, like that workshop that Gail did. She never read a complete story for any of those. She did pieces.
Marcia does that too, sometimes, not the whole thing.
Yeah, but mostly she reads the whole thing. I've read a lot of stuff on her show that's copyrighted. Yeah, and you know, as librarians, we're really aware of that all the time. You know,
She does
constantly.
mention where the book can be bought downtown.
Was that what you were headed toward? Yeah, and that's a problem. In Canada, I was just at a library conference there, and they have such strict laws. They can't even photocopy an illustration from a book and use it for a flannel board story or anything. I mean, it's totally against the law there. So, but we haven't done that here. We have not done story times. You can do a storyteller who's retelling a story, and that's okay.
That's really good.
Yeah. Now Dave's in that. I taped him doing that. But we haven't done where we're showing pictures from the book and somebody's reading the book and redoing that.
How about Your Night of 1,000 Stars? Wasn't that reading?
Those mostly were excerpts. They were pieces of books. Hardly anybody read an entire book. In fact, I don't think anybody did. Mostly what people did was they picked a chapter from their favorite book. And I figure we're covered pretty much under that educational and fair use blanket.
I read it.
Oh, yeah, that's right, you did. Don't tell anybody. Okay. Did that answer your question about book babies? Okay. Okay, well, I have no idea what time it is.
I'm going to tag in one thing about this book baby story also. I wish I could have talked to you about 3 months ago because I don't know the lady's name anymore, but the Carnegie Foundation is trying to find someone who's doing programs about what you're talking about.
Is that
now.
right?
Yeah, and I put something up on the electronic bulletin board. Nobody
Oh,
responded.
shoot.
And, you know, I didn't know who to put it.
There are a lot of libraries doing it. You know, it's,
Does Marcia ever come down and show her face?
oh yeah, she read for Night of 1,000 Stars.
She was our MC. For
That's
that.
right,
Yeah.
she was, and she read the year before. So, you know, she does a lot of stuff with us. We had,
But she's a librarian, originally.
well, she's married to a librarian.
Yes, yeah, no, but wasn't she out of the library field?
I don't think so, but I don't know that.
I think so.
Well, I think
They
we're
met
done.
in the library.
Oh, well,
Could you tell me, when is the conference you said you were going to in Boise?
it is next week.
Next week.
The Idaho State Reading Council Conference is in Boise, and the same time period is the Idaho Library Association in Nampa. It's those in-service days, all the teachers are out of school. Next Thursday, Friday, that's where they have that.
Idaho State Libraries?
Idaho Library Association and Idaho State Reading Council, I think is what it is.
I was going to find out if any of our librarians are going to that. Because I go and I tell them this and they're kind of like, so I thought maybe if I gave them your name and said she will be there, you know, I didn't just make this up, really. You know, she will be there. And find out if they're going to go. I think they probably are.
Are we finished? I think we are. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I gotta find this, my button on it.
I want to thank you for having the library open at civilized hours.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Yeah.
I mean, my kind of mind, I never could remember if this was Tuesday and it was open in the morning or Wednesday and it was closed in the evening.
It's much better to be consistent.
Yes,
Yeah, we are very consistent.
Yeah, now I can't possibly excuse Everett keeping a book open. I have also long intended to come down and talk to you about a collection of tapes that I have, the Knowledge
I was
Project
just telling you, I know
tapes.
what you mean about the ALA,
Are you
about
familiar
people
with
not
them at
being
all?
able to go there all the time.
Well,
I'm
these
married to
are,
a library in
oh.
tech. So she's
Okay.
always
So
wanted to
you're
go
sorry,
She never
to,
gets to go
she
anywhere.
never gets to go.
Fine, but
There's nothing in the
they
budget.
are,
Yeah.
And then,
there
yeah,
are
the
two
regional
sets. The
things for
second
library
set
technicians.
is on
The company won't even send anyone else for that. I think the people have been like there 4 or 5 years that they won't send.
developments and so on.
And so someone wants to go this year, you know, if you wanna go, we'll
But
just
the
pay for it
first set,
ourselves, but you go.
Well, see, that's
was
what I
on
end up doing.
social
Our
reformers,
library has no travel
and it
budget.
included,
And so I usually pay my way to
an
places.
excerpt from their
I have this
readings and,
writing company, this
an
Gil,
initial
one
Book
that does book
review.
babies, yeah, well,
setting,
yeah, we write
in
handbooks,
place,
and we actually have a company,
in
and so
history.
mostly we make our company pay for
all
it.
people
So
I've
we never
worked
make any
with
money, but our company
Oh,
pays our travel.
And
But yeah, that's really a problem, and here, I
I,
think our whole budget for our library, we have
not
staff
to the
of
place where I
20,
really
it's
wanted,
$500 for the whole year
I
long.
certainly don't want to
That
go.
buys you lunch at McDonald's.
Yeah, you can't go
I think
anywhere.
they're
And
a little
do you,
beyond,
so do
a
you
little
decide you're gonna
below what.
You still
I
recording?
usually-
No,
I
no,
think
let me
there are many
see.
universities who.
I'm embarrassed right now.
But I could bring them down and
No, we know this thing, let's see,
would there be
Brady Bunch.
use
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
for them?
Sure.
It's a story
of a man named Brady
Great.
who was bringing up three
very lovely boys. Oh, lonely boys.
Lovely boys.
Okay, we're done.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's okay, that's all we do. We only do this on buses when we've had a lot of beer to drink.
That's why. That's
I've
why we
enjoyed
did it.
the,
I met this lady in Tampa,
I
Florida.
know, it was
a wild
nasty,
time.
yeah.
It's fairly limited, but we do.
But so much fun.
As you can see, this is why I was tardy. I mean, when I came out there, I
Step
was
in
like,
the right direction.
Right.
please, you gotta have some
We
caffeine.
were talking about librarians.
Well,
I-
thanks for
Sort of, we try and sit down with Wally and talk about strategy on a particular issue or something. Wally had like a 5-minute attention span. That was like, you know, he'd sit down for a while and we'd go, well, Wally, you know, we're thinking about this and about that, blah, blah, you know. And then after about 5 minutes, he'd like, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom or something, you know. He goes, you guys just do, do whatever you think's right. You know?
You seem to make Don Quixote look like Lee Iacocca or something.
Well, the crowds are
But
just,
he-
they just keep coming.
But his continual presence and pushing. for
Come on,
more
sit with
different-
us up here.
Yeah,
difference
yeah.
Or
This
more
is-
difference than other
He's
people.
sneaking around the back.
This is the Workshop Collective.
I think
How's the audio? If we're
it's
just
gonna be tough, I'll bet.
yeah.
What do you think? You got audio?
We'll be sure to talk nice and loud.
What? I think the, yeah, I think the first order of business is for us to introduce ourselves and maybe give some of our backgrounds, because the original idea for this workshop was to talk with people involved in nonprofit organizations who are essentially not very familiar with public access television. And we understood that may or may not happen. And looking around, I see most people here are old access hands. And so this is probably going to change the presentation into more of a roundtable than a presentation, because for most of us, I think the basics are not going to be what's required. So I'd like to start out by introducing myself. I'm Ron Wheeler, and I'm the president of Missoula Community Access Television, your host organization. And I've been involved in access for about 12 years in one way or another. And presently I'm chairman of the board and do a lot of work in trying to encourage access use, and I guess that's my reason for being here.
And I'm Eric Stashen, and I am the vice president of the Multnomah Cable Regulatory Commission in sort of East Multnomah County in the Portland area. I'm also a somewhat recent grad of the program in community television out at Mount Hood Community College, and have been an access user for a few years, and a community activist and organizer on a variety of issues and
Award-winning.
campaigns for about 15 years.
And he got sent to Europe last year.
Bill Duggan from Idaho State University in Pocatello. Came here for the basics. am a novice in the area. Have responsibility for computing and telecommunications at the university, and we're looking into starting up an educational access TV station.
I'm Marty Welch from Idaho State. I was involved in access management for about 13 years, and I'm still an access producer. And I work with Bill at ISU. I'm here hopefully to get some ideas about getting an educational access channel going.
My name's Ray Larson. I work with Capital Community Television in Salem, Oregon. I'm the access coordinator there. And been involved in access since about 1980. And was at Portland State University and took some classes in the Film Studies Center. And that's still existing. Tom was there. And
Center for the Movie Industry.
yeah, get it correct, Becky. CMI gets it right stuff. And I'm interested in some of the ways that we can expedite work with NPR.
Like to just ask that we're going to have a tape of this, and hopefully it will be an educational experience for everyone who gets to see the tape, so please speak up.
My name's Charles Lewis, and I've been involved with access for a little over a year or so, and I've worked with I'm fortunate enough to work with a couple different access places, so I've kind of been around and seen how different places work and so forth, and I'm just real interested in seeing what I can do there.
My name is Michael Seitz. I'm also a member of the community TV program at Mount Hood. And I've been a teacher for 8 years working with Native American populations and involved in a lot of activist kind of work. And I was thinking about turning more toward television production when I stumbled on the community TV production, which combines the two sides of myself, and I figured, well, this is perfect. And this is a good way to learn about it. So I'm here to learn about what other people are using their cable access for.
I'm Lynn Merrick. I live in Bozeman, Montana, about 4 hours from here. Independent filmmaker and just do odd sort of jobs, and when I'm trying to get grants, and interested in what we can maybe get going in Bozeman.
My name is Rosa Leonardi from Salem, Oregon. I work with Ray at CCTV. I've been involved with public access for about 6 weeks now. And the reason I'm here is because I need to learn about the history and what is public access, and it's just a continuous learning process for me.
I'm Tom Taylor with the group called the Senior Community Video Project in Portland, which produced the program AgeWise. And our basic idea is to combine the talents and interests of seniors with the resources of public access to do community programming for nonprofits. So I've been working with nonprofits for close to 4 years now with AgeWise. At Portland State, we supported the program by using students to produce films for nonprofits, and they paid the cost. So we enabled students to have money to shoot film. So we've been working with nonprofits for a long time and have a lot of ideas about both the problems and potentials.
Oh, it's a real mix of people here. I think what I'll do to just sort of kick things off is give a very abbreviated version of what public access is and maybe what it isn't, and maybe we'll go around and work that way, and then eventually address maybe some specific questions and see if we can sort of gather the expertise that's obviously sitting around here. Public access goes back 20 and more years, but was recognized by the Congress in 1972 as a legitimate endeavor by communities in order to have a speaking voice in a media that was obviously booming, cable television. By 1984, the Cable Act, the 1984 Cable Act, which we now all operate under, was in place. And this Cable Act, among a lot of other things, gives municipalities, cities primarily, the right to negotiate with their cable companies. And the basic line is this, that the cable company needs to string wire, whether it's on poles or whether it's underground. They need to use the city's rights of way, overhead, underground, alleys, streets, and that this is a valuable commodity. The city then has the right to grant this right of way in exchange for other contracted sorts of concessions by the cable company. And the concessions that are legitimate are many, and many of them are specifically set out in the 1984 Cable Act. Probably the most important of these is PEG access, P-E-G, public, educational, and governmental access. What that means is that those segments of the city society will have virtual unlimited access to speak over one or any number of channels, so that some of the capacity of the cable operator's wire is given over to public speech, public, educational, and governmental speech. In addition to this, there has been allowances for the cities to negotiate for franchise fees, the contract being known as a franchise. Again, the city is granting right of way, and in return, the cities can negotiate for up to a 5% franchise fee. 5% means 5% of the gross income of that cable provider. Can include video services, can include data transmission, can include advertising. We're talking gross profits. The idea, as I understand it, and sometimes is not shared by the cities in question, is that these fees are to be used to enhance the service of those people who are essentially paying those fees, the consumers. So many of us in public access or in access television see those fees as a method of enhancing cable service, namely by giving people programs they ordinarily don't see, by doing narrow casting, which is in essence the opposite of broadcasting, that is the kinds of programs that don't depend on commercial sales in order to be produced, having much more narrow but intense interest to various segments of the community, and finally giving speech to those segments of the community that generally cannot afford to pay for that speech and shouldn't be asked to. In many cases, much of this franchise fee is given by the city to cable access, PEG access. In some cases, very little or none of it goes to PEG access. Cities, in their wisdom, can also negotiate for equipment, upfront stipends, once again in exchange for rights of way. And so we see most decent franchise agreements having a considerable amount of cash up front for purchase of equipment, for the outfitting of the studio, for laying of two-way cable or whatever else is involved. Plus we see what comes to enormous sums of money in franchise fees then dedicated to the facilities that will then offer speech, free speech over electronic media to people of the community. That's the best case scenario, and it goes from the very best case in some places to the very worst cases in others, as you might imagine. One of the most important uses of public access television is the use by nonprofit organizations. As you might guess, nonprofit organizations are generally organizations involved in social services, are generally organizations that have very limited budgets, and are generally organizations which simply cannot afford to speak to the public and therefore find their social services less than adequate, and less adequate than they would be if they had the right to speak and talk to people on a regular basis. Most of us in public access therefore feel that nonprofit organizations have a very, very special role in this entire process, and that's essentially what we want to speak to today.
What I want to run through real quick is you have this opportunity, this thing called the access, why nonprofits should consider utilizing access, some of which will be painfully obvious, but bear with me. And then sort of the how-tos, you know, how do you go about using it? And obviously there are a number of you in this room who have been doing this for quite some time, and so I apologize to those of you to which this will be repetitive and things you already know and have experienced, but also, after we're done, hopefully you'll share some of your experiences, both successes and opportunities where, I won't call them failures, but where, you learned from possible mistakes that were made. In terms of why you should consider access as a resource to be utilized, includes everything from increasing visibility for your organization, building membership through that increased visibility, or recruiting clients if you're a social service agency that is client-based, documenting projects or events, whether it's documenting a workshop at a conference such as this, to in Portland last week, a group called the Flying Focus Video Collective did a live George, the protests over George Bush's visit to Portland. I mean, they went live and they covered it in a way that none of the local broadcast affiliates did at all. They documented that event. Projects that your group is doing, you want to document that project for posterity and visibility purposes, membership purposes, fundraising, etc. Access is a tool for that. Community organizing, if you're involved in an issue, a campaign, whatever. If you're organizing, you get the word out. Access is a tool for that. Fundraising. Now, it's sort of tricky. There are some restrictions, and each access center, I suspect, is different, but they have various sort of qualifications or guidelines in terms of using using your show for on-air fundraising purposes. But usually you can do that by complying with the guidelines. But you can also use access for producing programs to use for grant making purposes. If you're if you're going to a foundation for a $10,000 grant, you can produce a little 15-minute show that shows what your organization's doing. Supply a copy of that tape with your grant proposal, and it's something for them to pop into their VCR, and it provides a much more visual representation of the work that you're doing. Training purposes. If you're a pro-choice organization and you're needing to train escorts for women going into clinics, you can produce a how-to, and that can both be shown on Access and then utilized in smaller purposes. I mean, advocacy goes along with community organizing. I mean, if you're advocating for a cause, for an issue, Access is a natural tool for you to be using. And skills building, it gives people in your organization the opportunity to learn video production skills. It's a means, it's a tool to help you accomplish your organizational goals, just like computers are. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of organizations were real resistant to computers, and once they got one and sort of figured out how it works, nobody uses typewriters again, once they use computers. Newsletter. I mean, I can, of us can remember when we used to have to, go to the typesetter, and you used to have to figure out all this point size and all. And now a lot of people are doing, their newsletters through desktop publishing on their own computers. And so, Access is a tool for you to incorporate into your work. In terms of how you utilize Access, there are a number of different ways. It could be as simple as most Access centers have a text channel, or sort of like a community billboard. I mean, you can just, you could submit something about your meeting coming up or an event, whatever, for the text channel, and and that, it'll publicize your event or your project or whatever. That's very cheap. It's very easy to do. It's very effective, particularly with repetition. You could submit a pre-produced program to be shown on the Access channel. If you're a local senior group, you can probably get some of the age-wise shows to be utilized. If you're a local group affiliated with a national organization, or you're a local peace group, there are some national peace groups that have a whole series of shows that you can run on your local Access channel, and you'd be well advised to put a little local tag at the end. And if you don't have those skills, most of the Access Center's staff will be, if you ask them, they'll be willing to help you out, so that you see this national tape on defense spending, and at the end a little kicker about if in Missoula, if you're interested, join the Missoula Peace group, whatever, with your address and phone number. You can appear on a program or series. Let's say, in Portland, there's a, Portland. I don't have a good example right off the top of my head, but there are a lot of weekly series or monthly series, talk shows, etc. You can contact the host and say, hey, we're working on this, and we'd love to appear on your show and talk about what it is we're doing. Again, that's a lot easier than producing your own show. You have a lot less control over the content, so there are always these various checks and balances that you have to weigh. But certainly, the other thing I want to say is they're not mutually exclusive. If you're either running pre-produced programs or you're producing your own, that doesn't mean you shouldn't think about trying to get your organization in on other shows that are also running. And then, of course, you can produce your own shows, and that's really hopefully what you should be gearing things towards. It can be a single show. It can be a series. I mean, it's all sort of dependent upon what you decide your goals for using Access are. It depends on your financial base. It depends on your volunteer base of support. Just a lot of factors to consider. In terms of, okay, you've produced a show or a series, or you've got somebody else's work that you're going to run that sort of helps promote the issue that you're working on. Some things you need to think about are targeting and promotion. And I think the two biggest things in my mind, and it's pretty subjective, that people and organizations don't often consider in terms of maximizing the potential of Access are quality control, which I'll speak to in a minute, and lack of promotion. Because if you've put a lot of time, if you've invested a lot of time and energy in producing a show, I mean, you really owe it to yourself, you really owe it to the volunteers, you owe it to the organization to sort of think about it in a planning process and develop some sort of promotional campaign, so that the people who end up watching the show aren't the 5 to 10 people who were involved, and people who happen to be flipping channels and catch a bit of it. I mean, you want people to know the show is on, you want them to know when it is, and you want them to watch it. And in doing that and in figuring out promotion, you need to spend some time thinking about who your target audience is. Who do you want to watch the show? Are you targeting your efforts to seniors? are you an organization working with kids? Are kids and parents your main focus? And sometimes, it's not so easy to figure out who your target audience is. I did a documentary on a nuclear plant in Oregon, and it would be a lot harder for me to figure out who my target audience is, although I could come up with one, but it's probably much more of a general public type. But try and think about who it is that you want to be watching the show and who's most likely to be interested, and that has some bearing on when you're going to schedule the show. So you gotta think about that. If it's a kids show, probably don't want it to be running at 11 o'clock at night. Although our kids are probably sneaking down and watching stuff. But in terms of promotion, if you've got a sense of who your target audience is, your promotion should be directed towards that target audience as much as you can. There are a variety of ways that you can promote your show, and according to the Cable TV Ad Bureau, the top 5 ways to promote cable programming are newspaper listings, newspaper advertising, cross-channel promotion, PSAs or something on the text channel, for instance, a TV guide listing, and listing in the local cable guide. Now, obviously, some of these are lower cost ways to promote the show, and some of them are higher cost and probably outside the realm of what most of us are able to do. I think one thing that's unfortunate and very frustrating to a lot of us in terms of newspaper listings is the access channels are not listed in the in the Oregonian, for instance. When they have the daily TV listings, they've got all the cable channels except access channels in the listing.
Have you tried with the Oregonian? I noticed that MCAT's listed.
Yes.
And I'm bringing that back from Statesman Journal to show them.
Oh, that's great. It has been. It's been quite a while, I think, and I don't know, Tom, if you know more about it than I.
No, I think there hasn't been the kind of concerted, real, organized pressure that's going to take.
Well, Pocatello, they wanted us to pay for it because they get their listings, they're done in New York and dumped by computer. And so they have to enter those. Usually, for the whole Intermountain West, they just dump a file to all the newspapers. If there's anything local, then they have to key them in. It's only like $10 a week or something like that, which to me is a legitimate expense for the paper. Somebody has to go and convince them of it.
I was talking to Randy yesterday, and he sends stuff into New York or Kansas or somewhere
Right.
to get it listed.
It's that same situation,
Yeah.
3 weeks in advance and to some central location.
Yeah, the Oregonians are done out of L.A. Damn California. But beyond those, which some are easier than others, some are more expensive than others, there are other lesser expensive ways to promote your show, and you definitely ought to be considering those. And those include radio PSAs, sending news releases to the local TV and radio stations, and newspapers. And newspapers, we're not just talking about the big daily in town. If you've got a weekly, sort of, the Independent in Missoula, Willamette Week in Portland, and even if you were able to plan ahead, monthlies or issue papers that there are some senior papers around. Go to the local co-ops or bookstores or whatever, and just pick. If you don't know of all the various free periodicals that are produced in your area, you ought to get yourself familiar with them, because oftentimes you can get something that's a little more feature related. I mean, half-page article or a full-page article promoting your organization and your show, etc. And it's pretty great for your group, and they're often very appreciative of the fact that you gave them consideration, and we're interested in, enough in them to contact them. Newsletters, I mean, most nonprofits do indeed have newsletters, and other organizations. I mean, if you can get some sort of promotion in other organizations' newsletters, sometimes think about developing a flyer and seeing if you can insert that in somebody else's newsletter. If you help pay for the mailing cost, or you provide volunteers for the mailing parties. I mean, the thing to keep in mind about all this is being creative and maximizing the potential for outreach, because there are all different kinds of ways of doing it. Like I said, flyers and leaflets. Develop a flyer and put it up in bookstores, in coffee houses, in food co-ops or senior centers or whatever. If it's a sports show, get flyers and put them in the local sporting goods stores. Whatever. There's don't be limited. Telephone poles. I don't know. Try it all out. If it's a particular issue or cause, say you're working on a ballot measure campaign, do some leaflets promoting the measure and the cause or something, and pass them out on the transit mall, or if the gubernatorial candidates or senatorial candidates are having a debate, be there outside the facility passing stuff out. One of the things that we did in a campaign that I was involved with in Oregon in 1984 was we did these half sheets, and half the sheet on one side it was ballot measure 3 and vote yes on measure 3, la la la, and on the other side was the football roster for the two teams, and we passed those out at football games, and we had all our volunteers and we're going, free rosters, and people were just eating them up. And of course, I mean, we weren't unique in terms of the only folks out in front leafleting, but the difference was after everybody was inside the stadium, you saw all kinds of vote for Joe flyers there on the ground that people had gotten, and I said, man, I don't want this shit. And you didn't see any of ours on the ground.
What was ballot measure 3?
It was the Citizens Utility Board. Yeah, and our opponents, they were not happy with some of the things we did. I mean, because it was creative and it was sort of unconventional, and it was indeed very effective. And so that's it was sort of tricky sometimes to get the rosters ahead of time. A lot of the university sports departments are sort of protective of that, but we had to be creative. Put messages on your if your organization has an office and have an answering machine, put a message on your answering machine. Sorry, we're not in, take your call, and don't forget, watch channel 21 at 7 o'clock on Friday nights for whatever. I mean, you got to be thinking about this stuff. Talk shows, radio talk shows. Call up the local radio talk show and well, I don't want to change the subject, but I've been seeing this great series, whatever. I mean, people listen to those things.
One of the things that I was thinking of doing in order to get our listing in the paper was to encourage some of our volunteers to start a letter writing campaign to the local newspaper, like, gee, how come we can't find Channel 34 in our paper, and just start it with one volunteer and let that volunteer pick up the ball and go with it, so we don't get implicated by the newspaper as exerting pressure on them or something.
I think that's a great idea. It's a great idea. And the thing that I've sort of come around to lately, and particularly with controversial stuff in the Oregonian, where I've had a number of letters that have been printed, is trying to develop, some sort of central resource for people to send copies of their letters to find out, who else is getting censored, because it's sort of like, unless you're talking with other people, you're thinking that it's just you, and I'm starting to find out, which shouldn't have surprised me in the least, that no, it's not just me, it's a whole lot of us. And so something like that, so that, just real quickly in terms of measuring effectiveness, because that's one thing you try and want to incorporate. I mean, if you're doing a show or series, you know, did anybody watch? I mean, if if a tree fell and nobody, if you put it on TV and nobody watched, was it really there at all? Some of the ways that you can attempt to measure effectiveness are to give your audience or viewers a chance to respond, and that includes, your organizational name and address and phone number at the end, and asking, for people to, we'd love to hear from you, your questions, comments, whatever. If you're doing a studio show, have an audience there and have some sort of interactive component. If you have the capability and the inclination, do it. And you're doing a live studio show, incorporate call-ins, and don't be too disappointed. Sometimes nobody calls in, and that, it's really kind of a weird dynamic. It doesn't necessarily mean nobody's watching. It's often like, when you have a group of folks and and the speaker asks for questions, and you need somebody to ask that first question or the second question.
Don't be afraid to shill it.
Yeah, don't be afraid to shill it. Right. And then, once, people don't want to be the first one to call in, and then the calls start rolling in. A couple of them
We
start
did a
happening.
program just recently with the Red Cross, and we had shills, of course. The shill calls never got through. Which was really encouraging. Because the program ended up with so many calls, I don't think there was more than 40 seconds between hang up and ring, which was really surprising. And we also got the paper, because we did a press release, the paper printed as a news article.
Right at the top of the column too for today's highlights. Yeah.
Eric, I totally agree with everything you said. It's a perfect textbook outline of all that one should do.
I got it out. Most of it.
It's absolutely correct, except it's totally unrealistic. If you did those jobs, you would probably need a full-time staff of 2 or 3 as a nonprofit to do an adequate job of, and you still haven't produced the program. And I think that's one of the real problems with nonprofits dealing with access, is you go lay this on somebody, goodbye, I can't even do the job that I'm supposed to do, let alone put all the extra effort into this. And I think that's our dilemma, is access. And since most of the people are working for access centers, I'd like to say some of the questions. One of the things that the nonprofit has a major problem with is scheduling. In 4 years of AgeWise, I've never been able to answer the question, when can I see your program on what channel? Unfortunately, we're dealing with several systems in the Portland area, but we publish a schedule, and people say, it's not on, and you call up, oh yeah, we moved it. We've never been able to get that, and that really undercuts the effort and makes it impossible for the group to do the kind of newsletter listings and so on. It's better now than it was 3 years ago, but still it's a problem, particularly in the smaller systems. It's a major one. Another one is you go to nonprofits and you ask them to do something, and they don't have the time. They don't have the volunteers. How are they going to do it? Then most centers have volunteer pools, but then there's no real training, either the volunteers or the organizations, on how to work together so that the programming becomes that. And that's, in a sense, one of the gaps that AgeWise is trying to fill. But one of the things we find is that people don't have the resources to take advantage of even a free offer. And to involve them in the production and the content is a very difficult, we originally started out to do it that way. We end up basically going in like news crews, and it's not as productive for both. Another major system problem is the restrictions in many systems on the use of tape subsequent. Like you can't sell the tapes. Now, it would be good if we could go into a nonprofit, and we do, saying, yeah, we'll produce this tape, we'll run it on Access, and you will, let's say, jointly market this to other organizations. Now, some Access centers wouldn't allow that, and I think that's they've got to be able to get something back besides just the program, because there's no way around the fact that one Access showing probably wouldn't justify the effort to produce a program. And I don't think Access centers have been really forthcoming on that, and to encourage and help them find alternate ways to get that tape shown. Not only repeat showings on the channel, which come on, but the encouragement and development of how to use it or how to get it in front of other groups, if they could sell it or rent it, which a lot of times is discouraged, if not forbidden. Then, in talking to people, they dismiss Access because I've seen that channel and all I see is religion, or I see all this weirdness and so on like that. I don't want to be associated with that. And I think that's a real inhibiting factor in Access, and I don't know how to deal with that or begin to touch that one. But it's a tough one because, again, you've got to think that the people that are running nonprofits, they grew up on commercial television. That's what they all of the press propaganda and so on talk about commercial television and those standards. And what we're doing is, quote, amateur, which means, and they don't want to be associated with it. And so we need to find ways of trying to overcome that problem. And, well, it becomes a real, a whole series of tough issues. I tend to think that we're sort of in almost the Emperor's New Clothes situation. We can cloak ourselves in all sorts of virtue and how wonderful and what we're doing. But the people that are, I think, there's a group of people that have got the initiative and the thrust and the wisdom, I would say, to take advantage of it. But there are a lot of people that are on the edge that we're closing off for a lot of reasons. I hope maybe people in the Access centers could, how do you deal with some of these issues?
I'd like to address one about staffing for programs, which is really a killer for a lot of nonprofits. And one of the things we decided real early was that you were not going to graduate from your studio production class unless you had a real program. And we tried to foster relations with the people in the NPO community. We get one person from an NPO to come. And then the studio production class is allowed collectively to decide on what program. But if you've got one person who has a real program that can be made, the class is usually amazingly quick to jump on. And so we got the program from the Red Cross basically out of a studio class. That was a graduating project. And for the Red Cross, it ended up that they had a little time to help with the
Well, that's a big organization, too.
It's a big organization, too, that's right. But we also pulled in a couple of people from other NPOs so that they could see what another NPO's project looked like. And I think that helped sell the process, but also helped cut a little bit of that, access. Because they had a chance to have that control themselves, and they could then sort of dismiss the issue of, well, it's not amateur, it's self-produced. We don't use the word amateur, it's self-produced programs. And that really seemed to change some of the dynamics. The people were really excited by that. But I think that the real killer issue is you don't always, say it differently, you probably will never have an NPO that can fully staff its own show.
Right. One of the issues at MCAT here in Missoula has always been this particular problem of finding a way that an NPO or any other entity could slide into television, because that's really what it takes, and I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that we've had in mind and have been unable to yet bring to fruition is we have a lot of volunteer producers, and they do some wonderful things. We have somebody taping right now. He's doing a wonderful job. They go out and they videotape a Wednesday lunch in Missoula outside. 1,500 people come and eat lunch together in the park. I would like to see, for example, in Missoula, a weekly program called NPO, right? Staffed by volunteers, right? You pick up the NPO, you bring them in. Two things happen. One is that they get to tell their story on television. But the other thing that happens is they get to see the facility, they get to sit in front of the camera, they get to see what the facility is about and see what some of the what some of the possibilities might be. It's not an answer, but it's part of it.
That's one of the things. We're 2 weeks from last Wednesday. We'll start the first of every other week. Age-Wise has a studio session. We'll invite nonprofits, and they'll have a half hour to. We'll work with them to develop something.
I mean, there are access facilities doing video phone booths now. I think it's a fantastic idea, right? You have, for a half hour, you have a camera and a microphone set up in a corner of the studio. Anybody who wants to come in gets 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. Say what you want, you're live, you're going out. Right? Nobody comes, you're in trouble. But, you know, you can always run the bulletin board. So,
Chicago, one of those that started, they had $50,000. And it's a self-operated booth with an overhead camera for your graphics and a camera on you and a telephone, and you do your own switching. And it's live call-in.
oh, wow. Well, I mean, you don't have to be that ambitious, really. I mean, one-chip camera and a microphone and a modulator, and you're on the air, you know. I think you can do it for almost nothing.
Yeah.
No production costs, that's for sure. One other thing I'd like to mention before. One of the things that really needs to be emphasized to nonprofit organizations, I think, is that one, the tape ought to be theirs. They should be able to sell it or certainly be able to distribute it. And I'd encourage access facilities to consider that. The other thing is that some of our NPOs in Missoula have had remarkable success using our facility as matching funds. That is, the in-kind contributions made by public access for a half-hour program is an enormous sum of money, right? And so these NPOs who are looking for matching grant money often find this to be really invaluable. I mean, there's nobody else is going to give them, you know, $5,000 for a half-hour program, and you know, it costs at least that. So. That's something that always ought to be considered by NPOs and always ought to be presented to them because it's a very valuable resource.
Do you have a third-party production?
We do, yeah, we do.
I'm curious how many access centers have cut people out from the ability to market the tape as a third party.
Does everybody know what a third-party contract is? Let me explain what that. In Missoula, for example, we allow producers to produce programs for someone, for an NPO, for example, who wants a program produced and does not have the facilities or the time or the individuals free to do the production. So they hire a, quote, professional producer to come in and produce their program. Well, what we do is we allow this to happen. We think that this opens up the facility to more people. The producer signs a contract with us and with the NPO that's financing the production. The producer is allowed to accept money for his or her services, but the contract states that they're getting all of the equipment and everything for free, so that everyone knows what's going on. And of course, the production continues to fit our guidelines of not-for-profit and whatever. What this has done is allowed local people to make some money and allowed a tremendous number of not-for-profit organizations to get their program produced. The essence of it, I think, however, is what you were talking about, and that is when it's done, it belongs to those producers or the people who paid to have it produced. And if that doesn't happen, you're really cutting a lot of people out.
In Missoula, if you, under that arrangement, once the show's been cablecast, can you as the nonprofit have copies made and then sell them?
Let me give you an example of something that just happened in Missoula and raised some eyebrows. I think it was perfectly legitimate. For about a year now, we've been seeing an individual in Missoula hammering the city council on pesticides, right? He wanted to have a warning ordinance. And lo and behold, because of public access television, I believe, this issue became live in the community, attracted a lot of people, promoted an ordinance, which is the city council chickened out on and put it on the ballot. These people came in to MCAT, did a 30, 40-second PSA urging, it was a well-done piece, urging people to vote for the ordinance, right? As soon as it ran on MCAT, they grabbed the tape, took off running down the street, and bought time on the local stations, right? So here we have this PSA running on local stations, right? It says, produced at MCAT, right? Paid for, a paid political announcement, right? And it's a beautiful, everybody's upset because public money is being used to fund, well, that's not the case, right? These guys did everything according to our guidelines, took it out, and are making really good use of it in the community.
That's great.
The reason people are angry is these people stole a march on the other side, right? But they used MCAT to do it, and that's great. You know.
I suspect the people who want to not have the ordinance are told, well, if you'd like to make a spot to say the ordinance is silly, come down and make your spot. Run it
Yeah.
on MCAT, and then go buy your time wherever you like.
Absolutely.
And an interesting thing,
They won't do it.
No, they haven't yet.
like I say, I did a documentary on the Trojan nuclear plant in Oregon that I finished last September. It was quite beyond when it was originally supposed to be done, but the timing was actually turned out quite well because there was a measure on last November's ballot to shut the plant down, and
Will be again.
the utility spent $2.5 million to defeat the ballot measure, which was a record in Oregon. And given what's that? How many million was my production?
Obviously 2.5 million.
million. How many millions of hours
$500
did I
an hour,
put
isn't
in?
it?
Yeah. But that was that's a record. That's a hell of a lot of money in Oregon, and most of it, of course, was spent on 30-second radio and TV spots. Sometimes they ran back-to-back 30-second spots on the 11 o'clock news. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. But what else they did, which was kind of interesting, and actually I should backtrack and say that a local company in Oregon, Solaflex, I don't know if people have heard of the bodybuilding machines. The owners of Solaflex are very anti-nuclear, and they have a lot of money to spend. And we have a what's called a local origination channel, or at least access channel. And Marilyn Wilson from Solaflex back in the spring bought up huge chunks of time on the least access channels in Portland, Eugene, and in Bend for the fall. And Solaflex did their own 30-second or 30-minute anti-Trojan commercial, and then she liked mine so much that she said if I did mine was 39 minutes, she said if I did a 30-minute version, she would run mine in conjunction with hers. So I quickly literally hacked out parts and did it. And, and this thing ran on channel 30 over and over again. Well, in terms of measuring effectiveness, it must have had some impact, because despite the fact that Portland General Electric spent $2.5 million in direct mail, radio, and TV ads, etc., they produced this 15-minute piece, no on ballot measure 4, that showed up on the access channels, and what little bit of time they could get on those least access channels. And I was quite flattered, to be perfectly honest. I mean, they're running all these 30-second spots. Well, they wouldn't have damn well, spent the, energy of doing this 15-minute piece if those, if our other pieces hadn't had some effect. We lost the election, but I mean,
But it was close.
close right up to the end. But I mean, outspent probably at least 50 to 1, if not more, this time around. But
Got a question for the group here, being a new person here. We're, as I mentioned, setting up, in the process of setting up an educational station. Okay, it'd be housed in the university and staffed probably by full-time people who that's part of their job, so we're not looking at volunteers. In the community now, we have a public access station, and we also, on our campus, have KISU, which is public TV. Probably what we're gonna do is steal, I guess, the best of the educational programming from the public TV and from the public access people who are using that now. You know, we're coming in and taking some of your programming away. And I don't want to come into the community in an adversarial role. You know, how do you people feel, or how would you feel if you know, we come in a separate entity and start taking some of your programming away? You know, what advice do you have that, you know, I don't want to appear as the new person on the block with some funding, some staff, and here you are with volunteers, and we're stealing the best of, maybe the best of some of your programming.
Define that a little bit tighter. I'm not sure what, you're gonna tape it off the air and then run it on your channel?
Well, we have now some of our instructors provide programming for public access. They'll have an educational program, and that's part of the public access. You know, it's a popular program. Okay, if we're going to set up an educational station, then we'll take that programming away.
Let me tell you what we look forward to in Missoula. Okay? In our franchise, we have a stipulation that as we saturate prime time, and there's a formula for that, on one channel we will open a second and eventually a third. Well, that may or may not happen in a city the size of Missoula, but the concept is that the PEG access is what we're after, that three-prong attack sort of. We believe in Missoula that we're a university town, we have lots of, we're educationally heavy in Missoula. We think there could be an educational channel, but we know that we're not going to make it happen. Somebody's got to put some money into educational access before there'll ever be an educational channel. We want to find someone, and someone who will be paid by some entity to supervise educational television in Missoula. We're not afraid that we're going to lose some of our educational programming from the public access, but rather we want to see somebody making some money so they can donate the time necessary to make educational access work. I think probably jealousy is not going to be the issue. I think probably most of us who are involved in access want to see more television of the access variety. And so I don't think that that's going to be a problem. I mean, you might get some individuals who object, but that's not going to be general.
In Salem, we had a similar agreement to expand to 2 channels, and what Chemeketa Community College has previously been using the access channel, 34. We had 34 and 35 allocated to us. 35 has been mixed media, sort of the Learning Channel and other commercial entities. And Chemeketa is now moving over to 35. And we see it as a really good move in terms of time on air, because what it does is it uses both of the access channels for what they were intended to do, which is public education and government access. And Chemeketa Community College provides a very solid leg in the educational commitment of channel assignment. I guess if I were being real territorial, I'd feel a little put off because they are not on 34 anymore, which is our primary channel. But frankly, I find it a really nice mix because it frees up airtime to do collateral programming that can be really supportive of each other. We can't drive 2 channels at once anyway. I mean, technologically, we have a diesel-age cable system. And, they barely have the oxen out of the line. So where it's really handy for us that Chemeketa Community College wants to pick up heavily on the educational leg, and because we tried to work a cooperative agreement with them, they've been tremendously helpful for the access side, so that we're able to use their satellite downlink site, which is a great freebie to us. We got the Best of the Northwest, which was telecast from the NFLCP National Awards program, direct live satellite feed to Salem.
All right.
And Chemeketa Community College bumped one of their program schedules around with staff people to get it on 35. We swapped channels because they had a previous commitment for educational show. And so it isn't really, I don't think it needs to be adversarial in any way, as long as everyone understands that toast can be buttered on both sides.
You said something about picking up public television programming. You're talking about buying.
Well, no, I just was curious whether you saw a conflict there, the fact that, or adversarial kind of thing. We do have KISU, which is public TV, housed on our campus.
No, but you're not talking about putting that onto the educational access.
No, I just wondered if they would see us as a competitor. I don't want that to happen.
Maybe I'll take
I can't speak for the university. We have some of those problems in Missoula in terms of the university feeling fairly territorial about television production. Thankfully, not everyone at the university, but we don't have the kind of cooperative mix that I think would be valuable. So I don't think any of this comes from the access side, to tell you the truth.
I don't see a lot of problem in terms of the programming aspect. I think, as Ron said, the more that gets shown, the better from our perspective. I think I assume you're probably already doing this, but in terms of working with the public access folks to get that channel, so that it's not a situation where you're negotiating with the cable company for some financial assistance, that they will come back around and the public access folks aren't in with that negotiation, and the cable company is able later to say to the public access folks, sorry, we're not going to give you any more funding, or we're not going to up the funding, or whatever you want for capital equipment, we can't do because we gave it to the educational folks, and so that's the sort of area that I think is a little more delicate than the programming aspect. Right, I was going to ask, what's the situation in Salem guidelines in terms of an NPO producing a show, and then do they have the rights to market?
Unlimited rights to the program after it's cable.
After it's cable.
And I would probably want to stand a little harder than you get one cable cast and you can run off, that we would have access to use it. We generally ask people to ask for a minimum of 2 or 3 slots, and most people go, well, gee, if you can do it more, that'd be better. So
Right.
Usually it isn't a problem.
But they can market
But
the
they can
tape.
do anything they want with it.
One of the agreements our producers sign, especially those third party, although everyone signs it, is that if they get lucky and make lots of money on their tape, then they pay us a set schedule of production fees. So that
Have you been able to, is that?
I don't think we had gotten a dime yet. Twice we got 2 dimes. We paid 20 cents. Is that right, Randy? Yes.
Where we picked up some money is offering the service, I'll call it a service as opposed to a burden. I think it's a burden of tape dubbing, because I don't have a dubbing station built. It's going to be real-time dubbing, obviously.
Yeah.
But I do have, as part of the agreement with the city and the county, that we will provide them tapes as they need it. So the dubbing station is a legitimate tool for us. It also means we just tell people it's $10 an hour plus, buy the tape from us. We're selling it at cost because of the IRS, $3.20 for the, Scotch VHS tape. And don't bring us any Gold Star or Magnatech or whatever that is.
Mighty Fine.
Mighty Fine. The stuff that's your machine, but that's where we can pick up a little of the return on the duplication fees. And then we'll also, I think if we needed to, if someone came into us and said, gee, we really need to make 100 tapes, I know I'd bend over backwards to find a way to get 100 tapes done for them. I'd probably end up going to some commercial houses that I know. But we've had offers from commercial houses to give us a break because we're an access center. And they were real upfront about it. I mean, their numbers were like 25% off their book rate because it was an access house. So
That's great. Yeah, I think it's really a critical issue that Tom raises, because it's,
I sure wish you two would write up a piece that would be in the Journal of I think that should be one of the roles of NFLCP is to because there are access centers that absolutely say no. There used to be, I don't know if there's still any there, that actually would not allow the master to leave the facility.
Because with the prevalence of VCRs, I mean, it's just, it really limits the potential of what you've done to be able to get out there in the community. And I think that inhibits the organization and also inhibits, the role that, visibility for access to.
Eric, what's the policy on selling the tapes at MCTV?
I don't know. Do you?
No, I've ignored it.
I
didn't want to ask.
Turn that thing off. I ignored it too. And actually, the documentary that I did on Trojan sold in a couple months, sold almost 300 copies for the organization that I did it for. And in part, that was because the issue was hot. Lloyd Marbett, who's in the video, who's a well-known anti-nuclear activist and was one of the sponsors of the ballot measure, had speaking engagements all around the state, and he used to have actually still does have a slideshow, but in those speaking engagements, instead of the slideshow, he showed the video, and sold, they sold it for $10, which really only made the organization. Actually, then he upped it to 15. He was like, people pay 15, and I don't want everything deal with, just, if you need 100 copies, I'll go to the commercial house, I'll get them made, etc. But yeah, the first 100 sold out. I mean, we made 100 copies, and the first 100 sold out in less than a week. And people in, in Bend and Hood River and Klamath Falls. And then what happened there was a whole, underground distribution network, because people saw it there, they got jazzed, they went, and they loaned it to a friend or their parents, and so I had all these wonderful little, anecdotes about, my dad saw it, and and it changed his mind, or my friend who was pro-nuclear and this and that. So I don't know what and I sort of decided that I didn't want to know, but that's not what I would suggest, and you might want to edit
There's
this
an
out. But I didn't really say that, and even if it's on tape, I will deny it.
The United Farm Workers, I think they set a wonderful model for raising funds. I got a postcard, we've got this tape, we'll send you free, The Wrath of Grapes. I sent the postcard in, and there was a little donation request in it, and they got money back, more than the $10 that it cost for the tape. But, nonprofits in terms of fundraising, I think that is an incredible model. Again, the Access Center would probably have to allow it. But,
and this, this was a pretty,
that's really
showed on
innovative use
Access
of video,
first.
I think.
Right there at the front of the, you slip it in, you press play, and right at the front is the, is the MCTV, intro, and so.
I'd like to ask one question. And this has to do with your negotiating and also with why. So the cable company is using the right of way of the cities. So why don't they just pay for that and then not have to give up airtime? I'm just trying to understand that. And in conjunction with that, why can't can PGE use public access tools and volunteers to produce their own thing? I just want to make sure I understand.
Well, I think that's an important question. I think that the '84 Cable Act very overtly addresses the free speech issue, or the lack of speech in most communities, and attempts to encourage cities to use cable access to provide speech for their citizens. And I think it's quite overt, since they talk about PEG access. It's there, and if cities want to take advantage of it, they have the ability to negotiate for it. So I think it's not a simple question of money. It could have been, but Congress decided to make it really more than that. And I'm not sure what you're talking about in terms of.
Well,
The
the
money
simple
that-
question is, can PG, yes, I mean, it's not,
Well, the
X-
FCC
X-
originally, when cable first started growing so much, the FCC required, there was no question, it was required that you have public access, government access, and educational access. And then in about '76, they said, well, no, it's not required. Actually, what they said was, it was that whole deregulation thing. The communities are taking care of it, we're getting out of it, we're gone. But that tradition of providing it was there, and the precedent was there.
Well, how does that relate to, let's say, other technology like telephone systems?
The telephone system pays a franchise fee.
And the gas
to-
company.
And the gas, and PGE does.
Yeah.
And that
You'll notice on
regulates
the bill,
regulates them too.
3%.
it says city, county assessments on gas bills and electric bills and phone bills.
That's right, and they use that funds for the 9/11 system as one of the ways they, okay, I'm just trying to make sure, I understand.
No, I think we need to go further with that. That's a straight money deal. And the telephone company is seen as essentially a conduit for others' speech, whereas a cable company is a First Amendment speaker. And they have this vast array of channels on which they're free to send their programming into people's homes. So what the government said is, well, you can't have it all. You got to give a little bit of it to the people. And so it's, an FCC regulation type of regulatory device. I mean, we've done it with the radio, with public service, we've done it with broadcast television, with public service requirements, and with cable, we're taking bits and pieces of their bandwidth and saying you have to give it to the people because it really does belong to them.
And the underlying issue that has yet to be really addressed very well is the cable companies, and I think you can include virtually any and all of them, will come crying about how horribly expensive access is to them. The tremendous overhead that giving up one of these valuable channels costs. And if you have a 30-channel system, giving up the channel is, 1/30th of your budget, and then go, oh my God, we only make, 4 cents a viewer. Well, the real question is, why can't we ever see the real numbers? Stop talking theory, and I want to know how many dollars after operating expenses is really left in your system. Well, that's not the question. And historically, cable companies put a double standard on the financial issue, which is access and education and government channels are a burden, and they're financially ruinous, but we're not going to tell you what the real numbers are. Or they'll do some things like a certain cable company in Portland, Oregon, which shall remain nameless, but they are the paragon of cable work, will simply lie by establishing a legally separate entity to act as an advertising agency and forget to tell the city and county what the assets and income of that agency were, despite the fact it is wholly owned by the parent corporation. And then, all of a sudden, magically, mystically, someone goes, you might want to ask about this. Oh, there's a check in the mail. And that's literally what happened.
But that was the crux of the issue that I couldn't make the connection, was that they're giving it all to the people, but what are the people getting a chance to do? They're just getting stuffed on it, but they're not getting a chance to give it back.
Well, for example, in the negotiation session yesterday, I was dealing with a cable company and a cable owner who said that he refuses to give any PEG access channels because he believes that he, as a First Amendment speaker, has the right to all of his channels, and if we take PEG access channels from him, we're taking away his free speech. Now that's a nice reasoned argument, except that he has 450 megahertz of bandwidth and is programming 29 channels. That means he has 40-some channels that are simply not being programmed. But he doesn't talk about that. So.
Well, it's
Well,
also
an aspect of it too
the-
is that they're putting themselves in the position of a newspaper any more than you require the Daily Missoulian to carry Beetle Bailey. You can't require putting themselves in that position with the assumption that that cable is a competitive.
Right.
Imprimatur.
Yeah.
He's not.
Right.
And that's the issue that the FCC addresses under the underlying legislation of the FCC. And that's something I think Access, in dealing with everyone, but particularly nonprofits, and it really does relate to that, is this is a fair game conduit. The FCC's regulations from Congress said these are what are referred to as common carrier legislation. And it will cover access and cover cable companies because they are essentially a licensed monopoly. They've avoided saying that directly, but they get in the issue of competitive marketing, competitive video systems, and then you can't compel if there's like 5 broadcast channels and there's seven broadcast channels plus a, if you go to the 6, you end up with the rule and it's 7 and you're outside and all this nonsense. Well, basically it's bogus deals like the phone company. Who's competing with the phone company in any one area? It's essentially a licensed monopoly. And when you want to be a licensed monopoly, sine obligatio. I'm sorry, that's the rule. And, I mean, that...
And particularly when you're using, I mean, in order to provide that service, they have to use the public right away. I mean, they have to string the cable along the street. You're sort of at time, I think. The one point that we didn't mention that I'd like to, I don't know necessarily close on, but at least certainly emphasize in terms of nonprofits, to the extent that you're utilizing access and taking advantage of access as a resource, to recognize that access is always going to be under attack in some various form from the cable companies, and to be one of those, strong supporters of access when access needs you to go to bat for them, whether it's writing letters to congressional reps or senators, local elected officials, whatever. But I don't think it's fair to assume that it's always going to be there, and we got to fight to keep it.
I certainly concur. I think that I think it's amazing to find out how free speech chafes some people. It's just incredible, and it's a real eye opener for a lot of us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, people should. There's this publication from the Benton Foundation. It's a mere $5 called Cable Access, a communications resource for nonprofits. And
yeah, that's a
it's
good
a great,
publication.
great resource. Yeah.
So what? You're going to be around for the next 2 days? Do you see yourself as being one of these fringe area producers?
1710 Rhode Island.
Because it is, I think it's a new area of potential jobs for students. Because they don't necessarily want to go to the commercial. What's the name?
Yeah. Rhode Island Northwest. You might want to go. What is it? The April 90 Bulletin 3.
Cable access.
Cable access.
Is it a monthly?
No, it just.
The wrong place at the wrong time. When we played
Oh, you men.
Yeah.
Great socks.
Just your own preference. I've never met
Good
Mark.
turnout. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. What are you involved in?
Oh, I'm doing distance learning mostly now.
Oh, okay.
But I've also been involved in access for a long time. I've done a lot of different things with kids and stuff. Come from several perspectives.
Hi there.
I'm Ron.
Who are you?
Who's this guy?
Okay, we're going to invite you to our premiere show.
Really? When's it
Yeah.
gonna be?
October 14th or 15th, whatever the Tuesday is that week.
Oh, good.
We're about one editing session we can finish it.
Really? All right. Great.
Should we get started?
Sure.
on video in the classroom, and we have 3 presenters that have very different experiences that can cover a quite wide variety of interests. Hopefully everybody's here's interest. This is Marty Welch, and I'm Tammy Rose, and this is Dave Severson. And we're first going to introduce ourselves and then go from there.
Okay, you want me to start?
Sure.
My name is Marty Welch. I'm at Idaho State University right now, and I'm primarily involved now in distance learning. We deliver about 50 to 70 hours a semester of distance learning classes. Some of it closed circuit, some of it open air over PBS that's interactive via phone. I've also been involved in Access for quite a few years, including kids programming and school programming, ranging from a magazine format by 6th graders to high school news types of things to a homework hotline, things like that. So I'm available to answer any questions you might have about any of those. And I think even video in the classroom, I don't know where you're all coming from, but if you don't have a cable system or access, you can start it closed circuit or just in your own classroom. There are a lot of possibilities.
I'm Tammy Rose, and I'm sort of an itinerant video trainer and video artist. And I do take clients. I try to take very few clients because I don't really enjoy the commercial work as much as I do the educational work. I've taught every age group video, and tends though to be, Dave was saying he associated me with elementary school kids. I have found that in Montana a lot of times the elementary schools are more open and interested in working with video, and the high schools are coming along slower. And those are the things I know most about.
Well, I'm Dave Severson, and I teach journalism at Sentinel High School here in Missoula. And so my interest has kind of been in a way to teach journalism, television journalism. And I've been trying to find ways to link up with the public access station so that the education community, particularly the high schools, can use the facilities at the public access TV station here in Missoula and fully use those to its greatest extent for educational purposes. We're just starting, and as Timmy said, the high schools are not as open to that sort of thing, at least here, as the elementary schools, and it's been kind of difficult. But I could talk about that situation, or I could talk about television journalism, or whatever you want. So
I want to put some of it in the context of the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment, in the sense that the kids' rights and the rights of educators and the educatees is a real nebulous area. And I think a lot of people that are working with kids and video and in any kind of aspect of education and video are really dealing directly with the issue of First Amendment. Who has the right to information? Who has the right to create information? And how is information disseminated in our culture and in our society? I think those are really important, crucial issues here. And it's okay if the discussion wants to get a little political about what is possible in your area, the type of information you want to transmit, how you can do that, what the resistances are to doing that, and what your chances are of being able to do that, which I think with cable access and the support systems that are out there, we're in a unique period in history where you probably have a good chance of helping keep democracy really active through the use of video in the schools and in your programs. So what we wanted to do was find out who was here, so that, because we all have lots to say, but we wanted to aim it towards your interest and share with you what was most pertinent to your interest. So would anybody like to jump out and say what, when they said video in the classroom, I'm going to go to this, was there something specifically you were interested in or looking for or something? Anybody?
Should we go around and
meet
everyone, or just jump in?
Whatever way.
I'll start.
Okay, Tim.
What I'm mostly interested in is I've been involved with early childhood education for the past several years at the University of Montana, and we've been trying to produce studio quality tape as possible for production and dissemination. And so mostly I'm interested in basically the whole step process and how to get that on the air and how to get that out for like an outreach type service so other people can find out what the program is all about.
I work with Tim at the did we skip over Ron Wheeler?
No, that's all right.
He'll
We'll
jump
get
in,
back.
he's brave.
We'll get back.
I work with Tim at the university, and we have very similar kinds of interests. From my perspective, I'm challenged by information management. We've got all this data, 3 years of data collected on VHS format videotape. And unlike statistics, we don't know how to crunch it down, and we know we've got some real useful things there. So I was looking forward to seeing how other people have handled that.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm Ron Wheeler, and I work with MCAT here in town, but I'm also a high school teacher, and I'm very disturbed by the most recent Supreme Court decision, which decided that student publications are really publications of the school, and therefore are edited by the school administration. I think it's infringed on the First Amendment speaking rights of students, and I think that public access can give them back to some degree, and so I'm interested in how that can happen.
Okay, I'm Jean, and I work with Tim and Rick and Shelley. We're from the co-teach program at the university. My interest is very similar to theirs in how we can go about getting together a tape that will present our program. I'm also really interested in the use of tape as a means of tracking children, assessing needs and things like that. And I have a third interest, which is helping children learn what media is all about and know how to use it so they can't be manipulated by it.
I'm here, I teach middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade speech and drama at Lolo, and I also teach as part of that a video production class. It's a pretty quick thing. It's half an hour, 2 days a week. And basically I just teach kids how to use equipment. I set up crews with a camera person, a sound person, and talent, and turn them loose with equipment. And I'm just here to see if there's anything else I can do.
My name is Margaret Markson. I'm a training coordinator at Tualatin Valley Community Access in Oregon, west side of Portland. And I'm probably the point person for the school districts mostly, and I work with Saturday Together, which is a nonprofit organization that works with the high schools and middle schools. And I work with elementary from about 3rd grade up. And I'm also interested, I find that there's a real need for people with my my skill level in the schools. And I'm wondering, as media specialists or instructors or like that, and so I'm kind of going the other direction. Wanting to get into schools instead of get schools into access, because it's already happening with us.
I'm Shelley Nielsen, and I work with University of Montana people. And my purpose for being here is to get any sort of information on how we can make a tape that will best show our program for other teachers and professionals.
I'm Julie Lamelchek, and I work for a Cable Regulatory Commission outside of Portland on the east side. And we're in the process of trying to allocate some money for educational uses of video. And more specifically, we're talking right now about buying the school districts in our area VCRs and monitors so they can tap more into what's provided by our PEG access operation, and also what's provided currently by the cable company through Cable in the Classroom, somewhat to counter what the little Channel 1 project is coming down.
The bane of everyone's existence. Should we come back over here?
Sure. I'm Gary Hill. I'm affiliated with a station, PEG station in Longview, Washington. For
For the past 2 years, we have created an alliance with our education service district and sending information into the schools, tapes that they provide. It's somewhat been a closed circuit system, only in the fact that we were scrambling during a couple hours a day, several days a week. We now have a separate channel for education purposes. The school districts themselves want to facilitate in-service, teacher in-service programs. And we also will be working closely with the educators, the teachers, instructors themselves, just starting off with just teaching them how to use a camcorder so that they could use it and apply it within the classroom. So I'm interested to find out what other aspects of video in the classroom is going on.
My name is Karen Reardon, and I'm the children's librarian at the Missoula Public Library, so I'm not in the school system, I'm in the public library, but we've already done quite a bit with MCAT. We have a monthly show where we interview a local author. Last week we videotaped Ken Thomas when he was in town, talking about his new book. Next week we're gonna do an interview on the street with people that come into the library about what they think about the First Amendment, because Banned Books Week starts next week. So we do quite a bit with it. We've done a couple of live shows, which are fun, but we do mostly stuff that we put on later. And I'm just interested in hearing what everybody else is doing, and getting some ideas for some more stuff. I also worked with Girl Scouts, and we made a show about books. So a lot of it is book and author oriented, but I'm also interested in doing educational videos for people. Like we have a video of a storyteller that came into the library, and we videoed that, and so now we can check that out to people and they can learn how to tell stories from watching a video. But then we do the entertaining stuff like Ken Thomas. He was great. He's a great storyteller. And people already are waiting in line for that video. They really want to see it. And I'm also, like Jean, interested in making the children aware of the evils of TV and how they can use it to their advantage.
Ladies in the back, most of you came in late. Well, we told who we were and very briefly, and then we're wanting to get an idea of what people had come to learn about so that we could focus our discussion more towards that, since we all have lots to say. So if you could just briefly tell us who you are and what, when you saw video in the classroom, triggered your coming into this room.
Well, you start over there because I was last one.
Oh, don't be shy.
Oh, I was the next last one. Okay.
And if you want to pass, you're welcome to pass.
No, I am long retired from the directorship of the nursery school at the university, where it seemed to me we were missing a real opportunity in teacher training in the use of video. And I think that the teaching field needs to begin to look at what it can learn from what would be shown them about how they're behaving in the classroom. That the classroom is sealed off from other observers, pretty much, the occasional principal dropping in. And as a teacher, you don't know yourself how you are behaving in the classroom, or how the students are behaving in relation to you. And I think that's a whole field, a whole new field for teacher training that, as far as I know, is never considered.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Carol Walters, and I just presented a workshop over in the other area on forward basics, so I'm supposed to be some sort of an expert on group process. But I'm also a certified teacher, and at the moment an unemployed library media specialist, and so I'm very interested in the video and its uses in the classroom.
I'm Barbara Millhouse, and I serve on the NCAP Board of Directors, and I'm here to rest.
But not fall asleep.
But not fall asleep. What caught my eye was the word on the program, whittle, because I have been very involved with the whittle situation through PTA. And so that is why I'm here. It was whittle that caught my eye.
I don't know what whittle is.
Good.
Why don't you tell us, Barbara? Can you get sort of?
Yeah, no, let's get on with
Okay.
the program.
Ron looks like he'll tell us.
No.
All right.
Is Whittle something local?
No, it's a national.
Whittle is a commercial television broadcasting system that is willing to give schools $50,000 worth of equipment if they'll show their commercial news programs to every student every day.
How neat.
Little is actually.
You're so good.
How to make a profit.
Okay, I know that. I know that. Well, I don't know why I'm here. I mean, I do know I'm trying to get our community television into our schools. Our access center in Ashland is only a year and a half old, and I'm on the cable commission, and I'm also an independent producer. And when I lived in Portland, I did quite a bit of access with kids in the schools. But since it's so young in Ashland, I'm trying to get ideas started down there. So I'm open to all ideas right now.
Does anybody want to just jump in, or do you want me to start in?
Well, I guess I could, in case anybody is unfamiliar with some possibilities, we could talk about some possibilities of what you can do with video in the classroom. And I think you can just start basically in Pocatello. Before there was an access center, some of the schools, most schools now have a closed circuit system where they can feed a signal to every room. And what they were doing in Pocatello was they were doing drama type of things. They would tape them and teach the kids about TV, which helps teach them how TV is done and how to understand how TV works, and that it's not magic and it's something anybody can do, that kind of thing. And then show it closed circuit to your other students. There's also a school in Pocatello called CREACT School, and the whole school it's a private school, is based that they teach concepts using drama. Okay, so that video could be incorporated just as well as plays or whatever. You can do it with video. And I think we always tend to get into some more structured things, so I'm glad that you're here. So we can do more arts types of things. But then you can also use your public access. And in Pocatello, we've had schools that have done, your more traditional television type of thing, where the kids go out and do interviews of things that interest them. And I think that's the important thing, is that whenever you are working with kids in public access, that the kids are in control. I think that's a real important issue, that it's them expressing their ideas, not you molding them into your idea of of what TV is. We've had lots of drama from the schools, a lot of school plays and whatnot. Let's see. And then there's the Whittle and the alternatives to that. In our area, the Channel 1, if you don't know, Channel 1, like Ron said, they provide a satellite dish and a TV, and then they provide news programming for students to discuss. But it's also full of commercials and whatnot. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, and I don't think it's bad to use television to focus discussions and whatnot. That's a good goal. And some alternatives, if you're really under pressure to do that, CNN provides programming every day for the same purpose that's commercial free, and so does the Discovery Channel. You can contact your local cable operator and they've got packets on how to set it up and whatnot. I was involved in teaching mass media at Florida State, and one of the things we did, which I think would be real good type of curriculum for any level of education, is we would make people look at a television program, go through a magazine, take the last 50 pages of advertising, and we would have worksheets for them to go through. Look at this ad on page 50. How is it appealing to you? What are they doing to you? We'd make them take a commercial and we'd storyboard it. They'd have to storyboard it. We would run it and they'd see what's being done, just so they understand to manipulate it using sound, the picture and whatnot. So I think that's a good way to approach the, yes, you are being manipulated. Don't believe what you see, too. You know, the idea of taking your information from a wide variety of sources, not just one or two. Let's see. There are also satellite services available. For higher education. At Idaho State, we're a member of the PBS Adult Learning Satellite Service, so we get a lot of documentaries, we get a lot of management type programs, you know, and a lot of telecourses that are available to us for relatively low cost, and we also have cable rights to them. So we can not only have them on reserve and check them out in our media center, but we can show them on the local cable system as well. Also, if you go into your community and you want to get involved in doing video or public access, start looking for people or places that are doing it. You might be surprised what you come up with. Like, I provide deep dish TV for 2 cable systems, okay, because I have a satellite dish and they don't. So Pocatello and Missoula get deep dish TV because I got a satellite and I'm willing to record it and send it to them. So I think that's one of the things that's important to do once you decide you want to become involved in access or video or whatever is don't try to go it alone. Start going out and looking and finding who you can work with, because you'll be surprised. There are a lot of people out there with the same interest, and you're a lot more effective, I think, that way. Let's see. And of course, I'm into distance learning. We do a lot of, we try to make it two-way interactive whenever possible. We've even linked people up. We have access to the state microwave system. So, like recently we had 2 reading classes, 2 4th grade reading classes that they picked some book or story and read it, and then they got together over the microwave and talked about it and made up little plays, you know, 1-minute skits or whatever about the topic, and presented them to each other and whatnot. That's pretty neat.
I'm impressed. A lot of places where I go, there's less of an emphasis on art. It's interesting that our communities I've found there's more emphasis on news and news gathering and more analytical kinds of efforts made by the schools. I find that most teachers are more comfortable in analytical relationship to the media than they are in creative relationship to the media, and there'll usually be one person, the librarian or a teacher or two, that has a real creative urge towards that particular medium and wants to bring that in. But mostly, the teachers are more comfortable with ways of helping the students analyze media, understand it, and have more solid relationship to that media and not be manipulated so much. However, I never work in that. I mean, I do that as a small part of what I do. I almost never do that except to help the teachers formulate in their own mind, because I think that they can do that. And how I got into this was that I really learned television because I was a theater artist, and I would do shows in New York, and we would be called successful, and we would maybe have 500 people would see the show. And I would go home and turn on the television, and I'd see what I considered garbage. And I thought, 8 million people are seeing this. This is not fair. And so I thought, well, I can't just get crazy. I have to learn how to use this medium. I have to learn how to use it. I have to learn how to translate what I'm trying to say into this language. That was my primary goal. I went to school. Jack Schomer, who presented the last workshop, was my teacher. Spent a lot of time screaming and yelling at me because I was in there with journalists, because Montana and media is very much associated with journalism. And I had to beg, plead, lie, scream, cry to get them to allow me to take their course with an art bent. And I would take every journalist course, I would do all the homework, and I would do one art project a quarter they would let me do. Every project I did won a prize, either in-state or out-of-state. Not one of my teachers would look at any of my work, not ever, okay? So then I finished school, I thought, okay, here I am, now I know how to do TV, what am I gonna do? You know, who am I gonna work for in Montana? And a woman stopped me in the park, a teacher, a music teacher, and she said, there's a desperate need in the schools for video. and you have to call around and you have to get yourself into the school somehow. So it took me 2 years of knocking on doors and explaining to principals that this was the medium of the future before finally, through the Arts Council, I became an artist in the schools, through the Arts Council, I started to develop connections with principals usually who were very forward-looking people. Now the interesting thing to me about this is I'm probably the most radical person here, maybe even in the room, in terms of my politics in relation to this medium. However, part of that radicalism, from my point of view, is that if you are incredibly conservative and totally don't believe the way I believe, I still have an obligation as a teacher to teach you how to say what you have to say as clearly as possible and as well as possible. I take that very seriously, and I ask the teachers in the schools that I work in to take that seriously also. That when you are teaching that medium to somebody, you don't also teach your politics. You don't also say, and the only thing you can express here is what is okay to be expressed. Because I think you're going to lose out. They aren't going to pick up that medium. They aren't going to want to use it. The interesting thing about video, from a child's point of view, and I take that child up to 18, okay, is that you're using your left brain analytical skills, but you're also using your right brain. You're also using the old hieroglyphic pictograph brain, the imaging brain, the brain that, as we're looking around, we're looking at body language, that intuitive brain. So you're picking out, a lot of times in the classroom, some of your, as a teacher, you're there, and you know that this kid is smart. You know this kid is smart, and maybe even as a natural leader, but they are not good with language. They just aren't. And you know that that kid is probably determined, because of the nature of our system, to be a failure, okay? That's a kid you can reclaim through video. That's a kid that can get huge amount of self-esteem with using that camera. I wrote down some of the things that teachers have said and that I have noticed when you're working with video with kids, or adults I think too, but especially it's exciting with kids. One of the main things that teachers notice is that it forces people to work in teams. Marty was saying, you suddenly find yourself with other people, and you have to communicate. You have to communicate. You can't just say, do the audio. You can't just say, shoot this scene. You have to communicate with them. You have to explain to them what you think you want. You have to take their opinions into consideration. That level of teamwork, that level of respecting the other person rises in relation to this medium. They can't go and just write their little story and hand it into the teacher. They have to write their story, explain it to their camera person, help their actors get into the part. It gets really complex, and you start raising your skills of your student body by miles. I mean, really noticeable shifts in that classroom dynamic between the teacher and the students among themselves. I've noticed, especially in Montana with our Native American students, are very visually acute, very. But a lot of times, because of the culture and the way their home life is, they're not doing that well in the classroom. And some of them have some respect of their classmates, some of them don't. You bring this into your classroom, you're going to get a balancing. You're going to get a mutual respect of skills that you don't have when you're only respecting analytical skills. Okay? You're going to start to respect people for being able to organize each other, for being able to be kind to each other, for being able to visualize. Okay? Those are real important skills in the society. Those are real important things to validate children that they are able to do. And it's real important to have children be able to validate each other for different types of skills. This is really important. Okay, teamwork. The left and right brain, it's a medium that mixes art and science, right? I mean, you have to understand that electricity flows a certain way and flows another way. You can't plug something in the wrong way or it won't work. So that's all science. That's all literal stuff. You can give tests on it if you want. Though I find it's not necessary. The kids are real quick. I mean, they'll get all A's. So if you need a quick A, go ahead and give the test. But, and then the art part. Okay, so now English teachers love this. You know, you have to conceptualize. What are you really trying to say here? What do you mean? But then, this is where I keep coming back, then don't say, no, you don't really mean that. No, you don't really want to say that. That's really important because that's where they're really fragile. If you finally get them to tell you, if they can finally figure out that what their concept is that running is really fun. That moment when you say, well, that's not serious enough, okay? Well, maybe it's not, but it's a real good subject for a video because it's a beautiful visual image. You put some music on that, you get a feeling of a lot of freedom, you get associated ideas running, and you can take them from that, but let them have, if they can get it, let them have it, is my feeling. And we see a lot of success with kids that way. Let them have it, let them have that freedom. You can't always give it to them in English and math because you got all these things that you have to qualify for, and you have all this national mujigush that may change someday. But we're lucky because video is new. And everybody in this room has a new head in a way. Everybody who works with it is open to it. It's exciting for them. Okay, science and art, teamwork, language skills. Okay, you gotta write to do video. Well, you're gonna have to write something down. English teachers love that too. You're gonna have to learn to talk. You're gonna have to learn to speak up when you're being cameraed, right? Right? That's real good for self-esteem. Conceptualization. Big higher learning skills. They don't let our kids do conceptualization unless they're in an Excel program and considered special intelligent people. Well, that's ridiculous. Everybody here who's been a teacher knows that, even slow learners are perfectly capable of conceptualizing if you give them a chance. And that puts them in a new category. That jumps them a category. Education, that's important. That's exciting. Self-esteem. I got into this because I got into suicidal teens. And I had made a real commitment to doing something about suicidal teens. And I have never, ever, I've taught everything. When I was trying to get my business off the ground, I was cleared to substitute teach K through 8, any subject, and high school, all the liberal arts subjects, okay? So, I've taught every subject you can possibly imagine. Video is the only thing that I have ever taught in a classroom that I have seen within hours raising group self-esteem. Now, I cannot emphasize that more. I think it will raise your self-esteem dealing with it and the kids, partly because we're talking about that big brother thing where the TV talks at us, that all of us are real aware of, okay? I won't go into a lot of detail, you can ask questions if you want, but that's I think, the crux of the matter. What you're talking about is empowerment and enfranchisement of groups of people that have been left out in one way or another. I'm done.
I don't know where to start here.
I know.
I guess one thing I thought of as you were talking is the reason some teachers maybe are scared of TV. Teachers are very fearful of this new way of doing things, and I've become very interested recently in visual literacy and a lot of the things Timmy was talking about with cooperative learning and teamwork and all the rest, because those are excellent outlets, excellent ways to get those types of programs going. But I think the reason there's a lot of journalism background in the media, in the television,
I'm not
in the
against
schools.
it.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
No,
I just
I
want to
know.
say that we're working with that.
Yeah,
That's our
yeah.
strongest foot in the door right
And
now.
I think the reason for that is it provides a structure for teachers, and they're very comfortable with a structure to deal with. And I still think, of course I'm prejudiced here because I am a journalism teacher, but I think you need that structure to start out a certain type of program. And maybe the key is not saying no to a kid, but saying, well, maybe we can make this better, and here's how we can make it better. I run into a couple of disasters because there was no structure given to the student, and they were given a camcorder and said, let's do TV, and they had no idea what to do, so they ended up producing horrible, horrible stuff, which just validated everybody's notion that TV is crap and there's no place for it in the school. I talked to a teacher who teaches in a Montana school that's on a reservation, and he said that had happened. They had a teacher who was kind of mildly interested in television, gave the kids a camcorder and not much direction, and they did a horrible, stereotypical cowboys and Indians type of film, which, wasn't good for a reservation. I mean, it was all of the same stereotypes, and it wasn't good television at all. And everybody in the school said, ugh, TV, that's what TV is. We're not going to do any more of that because it was horrible. And I had a student who was very interested in talking about self-esteem, and maybe he needed this, but because there was no structure in the school and I had no control over the situation, he ended up going in 1,000 different directions with a television news program, which ended up failing because he didn't know anything about journalism. He was doing a lot of the things that were bad journalism, and you know, things that I guess I couldn't tolerate, maybe because I'm a little too conservative in that area, that if they're going to do it, I would like them to do it well. And I don't know where this fits in with art, because I think art is
just as disciplined.
it needs to be
Yeah.
just as disciplined.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can't say, let's do
Absolutely.
art with video
No.
and have the kids know what to do. So a key is to teach them some visual literacy before we get there. And the structure of a journalism class or a unit on the media is a good place to start, because then the kids come into the project with some knowledge of what is good TV and what's bad TV. And after that, then I think they can be allowed the freedom.
Yeah, I'm probably stricter than you are, Dave.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Well, that's good.
I have, my bottom line is that there is no freedom without responsibility. And
that's
for an artist,
exactly right.
discipline isn't an external thing, it's an internal thing. A ballet dancer has got to dance every day, a piano player has got to practice every day. That's an internal thing. So what we try to do is teach them to bring that discipline inside, but no, we don't let them wander around.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, I totally agree with you. You
So,
just want people
so that, that
no.
structure is ultimately important, and that's why it's
Very
real
important.
easy to put a concert, because the visual arts are very easy to videotape and get on and get going. Say, here's a concert, here's a choral concert or a band concert or something, even sports. I mean, the structure's there. You videotape it, you put it on. It's a way to get your foot in the door with a public access, I think. And that's the way you've got to get started. I tried to get a structure set up here for Missoula with the high schools, but it failed. It was a political disaster. So I'm real happy to see that there's some people here who are specifically calling themselves coordinators with schools, because that's what's necessary. You have to have a person be a coordinator with the school. You can't just buy a bunch of equipment for the school and say, do it. It'll sit in the corner and gather dust, because the teachers are very busy. They don't have a lot of time. If you've got a person who's there as a resource for the schools to say, how can I help you? What are your pet projects that you want? What a lot of you talked about, PR projects that you want to get on the air to promote your own programs. If there's a coordinator either at a public access station or a coordinator that's hired by the school district or by a private organization who's willing to do that and be a liaison between public access and the education, then that's going to be successful.
When you are doing your journalism, do you start video at the beginning, or do you take them through a couple of things and then bring video in as another journalism track? Like, how do you structure your class?
Well, I do that, the second option, where I bring it in as another unit in my journalism program. We tried to get a separate class in television journalism in place, but because of money and, again, the fear of television and people saying that television isn't a worthwhile study, made it fail. So I'm going to have to go at it from different angles. So it's difficult to get that structure
You take
started.
basic principles. I'm just to make it real clear for people how we work, because I do the same thing. I think you take basic principles of a form of communication, which is journalism, and you work it from print media through pictures and then into video or something like that.
I start with writing. We're working on writing right now. I go into the freedom but with responsibility type of thing, and then when we get down into they've mastered the writing, they go into the television, which they've got to shift gears. It's a whole new way of thinking. It's visual. Very successful if you can get the right structure in a Native American school, because Native American students think visually, and they're very good at it.
You noticed that. I was really surprised, because I come from the East Coast, and we had Puerto Rican kids and black kids who had a lot of talent in different areas, but I'd never taught Native American kids. So I was really astounded. I was very impressed. Very impressed.
Any comments?
Questions?
Do you do much criticism of television itself to begin your classes? You mentioned a little bit of it. For instance, that children spend as much time watching television these days as they do in school. It's up to about 30 hours a week. Do you talk about any of those statistics or any of the national habit, or television as a cultural medium that you don't make it in this country until you're on television? And once you're on television, then you are famous, or then you are worthy of our attention. You know, it used to be that you'd see something on television and you'd say, that reminds me of something that I saw the other day on the street or in the woods. And now you see something in the woods and you say, oh, that looks just like something I saw on television. Do you talk anything at all about the cultural definition of what television is?
In a journalistic sense, we analyze the media quite a bit, but the structure for that is in an English class or a social studies class or a journalism class, and I don't think it goes on too much in other classes, but it should.
That's one of the approaches I've always taken, because you're always having to defend public access. I find, especially with like library boards, that's where I started in public access, was in a library setting, city councils. And the approach I've generally taken with libraries is you've got thousands of books here about things that have happened in the past, but mostly it's what's happened, you know, everywhere but Pocatello, okay? You've got all this information about the rest of the world. There's no information about us. And we're just as important as anywhere else, and that's one of the values of public access is here they are on TV, and it does lend that importance. It's just like you said, people think, you know, well, why should we do something about here in Pocatello? Because, you know, it's not important, but it is, and that's what one of the real values of public access, I think, is that all of a sudden things happening in Missoula or Pocatello or wherever, they're important because, and I guess maybe you shouldn't keep that going, but it does lend credibility to things, to having it on the TV.
Also, there was a lady named Kathy Rogers, who's a doctor here, who's a really intelligent lady, gave a lecture the other day on does television harm our kids? They passed out the sheet through the parents of kids in school in Missoula, and I have one in there. So I went to listen to her, and I was really interested, and we had a good discussion afterwards. One of the things that I noticed about it that might help you in talking to your administrations and stuff, and also with what you're saying, Jeff, is I think there's a tendency to talk about it as if it's a vice, as if it itself, there's something bad in it itself. And I think that's a tricky, that's a kind of interesting thing. That's like blaming rock and roll for people being, I don't know what. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a really illogical argument, and I think even teachers can be made to understand that that's an illogical argument. And I find that one of the things that is hard for a teacher to hear and a school system to hear, but that they do hear, is what we're talking about is active versus passive relationship to anything. And that we as teachers are as much responsible for creating passive students as that television set. And that we can change that at every level, no matter what we're dealing with at any time, with respect, with including the other in the conversation, and in many other ways, and that's what access does, and that's what decentralizing communications does, and giving means of communication and skills. I really hope I didn't de-emphasize skills in communication to children, women, handicapped people, seniors, people in small towns who don't think they exist because they see no reflection of themselves in the outside world. And I don't think that that's a new thing. I think art, coming from theater, and maybe Ron can talk about that too, but I mean, I think that the role of art has always been to be a big mirror back and validate people, and to take our problems and kind of conceptualize them and metaphorize them and give them back to people and to try to give people a handle on the problems that they're having and the issues that they're experiencing, and to act as a reflecting. So in our culture right now, what we're getting reflected back to us, I think we all agree, is an extremely distorted picture of who we really are. And so what we're talking about, I think, is